Often I've struggled with Christianity's appeal to necessity. Christianity tends to solve deep existential questions, and so its truth seems to be a matter of convenience. In this video, we will explore the relationship between truth and necessity, and thus the relationship between the Christian claim and the existential truth claim of the human experience. First off, let's answer the question, does necessity equal truth? Well, I would say it depends on how you use the word necessity. Used correctly, yes, necessity does equal truth. A combustion engine needs fuel to function. This is both a claim about what is necessary and a claim about what is truth. Then there is a confusion between desire and necessity. I need coffee is neither a claim about what is necessary, nor, and therefore, is not a claim about what is true. Here's an interesting question. Does every question necessitate an answer? Or to put it differently, does an answer exist for every question? One way of thinking about this is this. Imagine truth as being two sides of an electrical cable. One side is a switch and the other one is a light bulb. The question here would be the switch and the answer would be the light bulb. There are some questions that understand the entire distance, electrical charge, and characteristics that go from the switch to the light bulb. These are questions that can be answered by us. Questions like, does a combustion engine need fuel to run? Has a definite answer, and the answer is yes. However, if you were to go back in time, into a time in which the combustion engine had not yet been invented, the answer would still be yes, but it would be unanswerable by people. The answer would still be floating out there, but it would be unreachable by us until we invent the combustion engine and then grasp the answer to that question. So to say that every question has an answer seems to be somewhat an intuitive statement. The answer, though, might be unexpected and not necessarily in the same realm as the question. For example, if someone were to ask, how much does a unicorn weigh? This question is about weight, not about the ontology of unicorns. However, if, for the sake of the argument, we looked everywhere in the universe and concluded that unicorns do not, and will not exist, the answer would be an ontological answer. That is, the question about the weight of a unicorn could not be answered, because unicorns do not exist. But that in itself is still an answer. If someone asks how much unicorns weigh and you respond, they don't exist, it might seem like this is just a response to incoherence, but in fact, it's a response to the assumptions of the question. The question, how much do unicorns weigh, assumes two things. One, unicorns exist, and two, they have mass. The answer simply sets back the question to its first assumption and resolves it by answering the first question. Here's the problem. We don't know whether unicorns exist or not, and thus we can't say how much they weigh. Thus, the answer that we can provide is, I don't know. But it seems as though since the question, how much do unicorns weigh, is an inquiry about reality, an answer does exist. We just don't know it. This example allows us to understand that every question necessitates an answer, and thus every question, no matter how stupid, has an answer. Now, we can move towards the existential question of meaning. First of all, we need to ask, does man need meaning? This is probably the most difficult question that exists, because it is clear that man does not survive only with food and water. His mental state is clearly a real contributor to his survival. Just like engine needs fuel to run, but also oil to run it smoothly and prevent it from eating itself, so does man need food and water to survive, but perhaps he needs meaning to prevent him from eating himself. Let's take a quick step back and see if this need is actual necessity or just mere desire. First, we need to understand what desire is, which of course that alone would take a lifetime of exploration to actually understand. But I believe we can at least arrive at its basic mechanism and how perhaps it is tied to necessity. To do this, let's think of something we often desire that is pretty absurd. Let's say we desire a specific article of clothing or a gaming console. It's very easy to say that one does not need a specific console or a specific article of clothing. On the outset, this may very well be a simple vain desires. But psychology tells us that even the most shallow desires are linked to a deeper necessity. Perhaps the desire for entertainment is a lower resolution of the necessity for a relationship. The desire for video games could very well be a lower resolution of the need for purpose. The desire to be fashionable could very well be a manifestation of the need to be desirable. This seems perfectly intuitive, and many thinkers have spent their entire lives discovering this desire mechanisms. And it seems as though desire is a form of necessity, and thus a matter of truth. Before we move on to our final analysis, we need to clarify something. The claim, a combustion engine needs fuel, has three truth claims. Number one, a combustion engine exists. Number two, a combustion engine needs fuel. Number three, fuel exists. So the word necessity in this context carries with it the existence of fuel. Now, in this particular example, we could imagine a world in which fuel no longer exists, and thus the engine would still need fuel. But that necessity does not equate to fuel existing. However, the combustion engine was created with the knowledge that fuel exists, and thus it needing fuel to run necessitates that fuel exists. In fact, if fuel did not exist and had never existed, a combustion engine that runs on fuel would be an impossibility because the characteristics of fuel would be impossible to discern. To give an example, we cannot create an engine that runs on unicorn dust because we do not know the characteristics of unicorn dust and thus cannot create a mechanism that can abstract the energy from unicorn dust and convert it into what we need it to become. Therefore, the necessity for something indicates the existence of that something. So the ultimate question is whether we need God or not. If we need God, speaking truly from a point of necessity, then God has to exist. Therefore, in the last analysis, the proper question is, does the desire for meaning, for relationship, for eternal love come from a deeper necessity, or is that desire the ultimate necessity and thus points towards the ultimate truth?